Welcome to this little talk which I am going to have. It's a satsang actually. So let me explain what a satsang is. Now, I am very happy to address this group because my autobiography is titled Apprentice to a Himalayan Master. Well, I go to Finland very often and it looks just like the Himalayas to me. We are addressing Norway, the region which has so many snow-clad mountains that you go there and sit down and you think you are back in the Himalayas. So I think the subject today, which is yoga beyond asanas, is going to be understood well, even though some people may not be exposed to yoga very much. Let me explain first why I call it yoga beyond asanas. Why is this talk called yoga beyond asanas? Because as far as the world is concerned, especially the Western world, yoga is associated with postures, which is good. Yoga for health, yoga for postures. If you go to Hollywood, there are so many little places where they teach yoga, and what they mean by yoga is how to stand on your head, how to bend your body into different postures, and so on, mainly for physical health, physical well-being, and also to keep your body fit. If a person practices yoga for many years, I can assure you that the little paunch that appears after a certain age will refuse to appear, and you will be really thin and trim and okay. So this is why yoga is popular, especially in Hollywood, because everybody wants to have a slim, fit body and carry on with life and so on. Okay. But is yoga only to do with postures? While I fully appreciate yoga, asanas, the postures are called asanas, and I myself am someone who has been practicing yoga asanas from the age of 10 till today. Today morning also I did my yoga asanas. So while it has its own benefits and merits, we need to actually go a little beyond this, just the postures. Because I think also that yoga, although the origin of India, which we are very proud of, is India, it has an universal appeal because it is meant for all humanity. One of the prayers which we chant before we start the practice of yoga is Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, may the whole world be happy, which means everybody is included. So therefore it's a very inclusive teaching for all humanity. It does not set anybody apart and say only these people can practice yoga. So here we are. So yoga is beyond caste, creed, religion, race, everything. Humanity deserves to know what yoga is all about. From ancient times, from the time of the Upanishads, there have been a lot of texts on yoga and the practice of yoga and so on. However, I am not sure exactly of the year. The great teacher called Patanjali codified all the available material on yoga and put it together into a book, into a text called the Yoga Sutras. Now the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, therefore, from that time have been followed as the standard textbook for yoga. There are other books like the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and various other books. And of course, if you go back to the Yoga Upanishads, there are very many discussions on what yoga means and so on and so forth. But for the time being, let's stay with the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali because they are concise, which is why they are called sutras. When you say sutra, it means it is an aphorism which needs to be interpreted by somebody because it's so tightly edited that the whole thing is put in one sentence and you need a proper interpretation to understand what it actually means. This is the meaning of a sutra. So it's in English you can say aphorism. Now the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali have been around for at least 200 years. In the Yogacara school of Buddhism also yoga is practiced. also in the Hindu systems of thought, yoga is practiced. Now Patanjali is trying to define what yoga is. Now Patanjali starts his text by saying, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Here begins the study of yoga. And then in the next chapter, which is the chapter on practice, he says, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. This is the definition of yoga. So therefore, asanas, postures, diet, way of living, everything is included and everything is necessary to bring about what he calls Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So let me explain what it means. Chitta is the mind. Mind with all its thoughts, positive, negative, pulling in one direction, pulling in the other, tensions, sometimes beautiful periods of peace. All these together form the mind. The mind is thought. You cannot even conceive of a mind without thought. Not possible. If I say, well, now I am without thought, I am already thinking. So there is no way you can separate this from mind, thought. So mind here, chitta, the word used here, chitta, is that which gives rise to thought, which is the basis or the root of all thought, and into which perhaps thought subsides in the end, which is the aim of yoga. Now, in this mind, which is agitated by thought, positive, negative, even positive can agitate because it becomes too exciting. You don't know what happens when you are very excited. Check your BP if you are going high. And when you are depressed, your BP is going low. So, what the yogi is trying to do, what Patanjali is trying to do, is to make sure that all the distractions of the mind, all the thoughts which are distractions of the mind, are removed by a certain process. Now when the distractions are removed, two things happen. One is the mind becomes clear like a pond without a ripple. And in that one gets the reflection of one's original mind. Now a mind without distractions is not any more an individual mind. It is the Purusha itself, a reflection of the Purusha, which is the supreme all-pervading reality. Now, what happens is you begin to sense that you are no more a limited individual, that your potential is unlimited, that your source from which you come is unlimited, and you have access to tremendous amounts of energy which you normally thought you don't have. One. Second, because there are no distractions, the energy in the mind remains fully saturated without being dissipated. Energy of the mind is dissipated because of our distractions. The moment we free the mind of distractions, there is no loss of energy, because loss of energy is brought about through distractions. Now, to dwell into the core of our mind, which we would call consciousness, we need full potential of all the energy that we possess, which is normally dissipated by distractions. So the practice of yoga is aimed to remove all these distractions, make the mind calm. A mind which is calm and quiet is a mind which becomes a tarmac from which you can take off to the higher levels of being. One. Secondly, you dehypnotize yourself from the fact that you are a limited individual, your possibilities are limited, you can't go beyond this, and so on and so forth. A mind which is freed itself of all the distractions, of all the distracting thoughts, is a mind which has its full potential and which is able to expand to levels which we cannot even conceive of. So if you have heard stories of great yogis being able to bring about change through thought, that is because they have hit upon a way of how to contact the essence of all energy, which happens only when the mind is completely not distracted. An undistracted, quiet mind is called a concentrated mind. And that concentrated mind also has a one-pointedness which when applied to anything worldly or spiritual begins to give you optimum results. So you grow up to be a really wonderful human being inside and outside. Okay, having said that, how come that asanas or postures became the most important part of yoga? Because Patanjali has defined this yoga as having 8 parts. 8 in Sanskrit is ashta, 8 parts. So therefore sometimes it's also referred to as Ashtanga Yoga. So what are the angas? What are the parts of yoga? 1. Yamas and Niyamas, rules and regulations to be followed. One of the prime rules and regulations is you need to breathe fresh air. You need to live in a place where there is fresh air. There's not too many fumes and all the things that modern civilization has brought about. I must say that I have been to some parts of the Nordic region. Many parts are actually free of pollution. I've lived in Finland, in Rovaniemi, which is about 1.5 hours from, what is that airport we have in Finland? What's that airport? Helsinki. Helsinki is actually, the word sounds funny, Helsinki. Actually, I think it's Heavensinki. And Rovaniemi is full of lakes and ice-clad mountains, and it's so beautiful. So this is essential. So since this is addressed to the Nordic region, I think one part of Yama Niyamas you already possess. You already have. You don't have to go looking for it. Fresh air, beautiful places. Some of the other Yama Niyamas are limited food, which means moderation in food, moderation in activity, moderation in sleep, and moderation in enjoyment. It's not as if the yogi gives up all enjoyment. Well, he moderates it so that his mind and body are not dissipated. That is the main thing. So, when this happens, the body and the mind therefore become kind of integrated with each other. If you limit your food and if you are not eating too much food or you are not starving yourself, then what happens? The food that you eat goes to form energy rather than become waste. So, when the whole process of biological evolution in the human body, biologically, is metabolism. Now, metabolism has catabolism and anabolism. If you stick to medium eating style, which means don't eat too much or don't eat too little, automatically the process of catabolism, which is the destruction of the cells, becomes less and your anabolism becomes more, and therefore your metabolism is in optimum level. It's working, which is why they have said moderation in diet. The question of whether you should be vegetarian or non-vegetarian, let's not discuss it now. But even if, look, suppose I am a vegetarian, I prefer vegetarian, I would suggest that anybody practicing yoga rather be vegetarian. There's nothing to be surprised. I've just come back from Switzerland, just a few days back, and there are in Bern itself, there are 3 restaurants which cater only to vegetarians. Vegetarianism is catching up because medically it has been found to be very useful. And it's a myth that if you are a vegetarian, you don't have enough nutrition. It's a complete myth. In fact, just before I came, the last day I went to a purely vegetarian restaurant, not even vegan, vegetarian restaurant. And I enjoyed the food. And the tables are full because not with Indians but with Westerners. Can you imagine this? But I don't know why we are moving towards non-veg and they are moving towards vegetarianism. Maybe because they are living near the snow-clad Himalayas, I don't know. Anyway, so, and moderation in rest. If you sleep too much, the whole day will be dull for you. If you sleep too little, you cannot work during the day. So, moderation, sleep enough, but don't sleep too much. Eat enough, don't eat too much. These are the golden rules to follow in the Yama Niyama practice. Then of course there is ahimsa, non-violence. Now ahimsa is not only a physical way of living, of not causing injury to others physically, but also in your mind. As important in ahimsa as not causing physical injury to others is that you don't cause mind injury to others, which means you can hurt a person through words. You need not necessarily slap a person. So avoid that. You know why? Because if you cause injury to others, the world is one interconnected. The injury comes back to you. Have you thought about this? The whole world is so interconnected. One part of the world and the other part of the world are linked. We don't see the link. You hurt somebody and the hurt comes back to you. It's like a boomerang. You may not notice it immediately, but it comes back to you in the end. This is called the theory of karma. So avoid. Why would you want to cause injury to others if it's causing injury to yourself? This is the thing one should think of. So these are some of, and simple living. Don't have too many things because you keep worrying about this, what will happen if that thing goes off, what will happen if the third thing goes off. So how will you meditate? Because among the 8 angas or the 8 parts of yoga, according to Patanjali, after the rules and regulations which we discussed, come the rest, which is asanas. The next part is asana. What are asanas? Asanas are not merely exercises to build your muscle or to keep you well, which is of course part of asanas. It is also, if you look carefully, I've just had a discussion with the WHO, with the director, and I was trying to explain that yoga postures have also a lasting effect on your endocrine system, which is your ductless gland starting from your pituitary to the pineal and down till the last gland, which is at the end of your spine in front of course. So these ductless glands are responsible for well-being. Tiny amounts of hormones from these glands are injected into our bloodstream. When you say I'm feeling quite well, I'm meditating, I'm feeling quite well, let me tell you that it is also a chemical process. Why? Because the pituitary has injected a little bit of serotonin into your system and therefore you feel wonderful. So it's also a chemical process. Now, through yoga postures and through yoga breathing, which is pranayama, you can regulate this chemical process. So this is why yoga is not just some spiritual nothing which you can't grasp. It's something which you can grasp and then go beyond that which you can grasp with your senses. So it is a practical way of how to control the chemical processes of inducing your moods. If enough research is done in this matter, I bet it can be used for bring people to a normal way of living if they are behaving in subnormal or abnormal ways. For an ordinary person, it balances the introduction of these chemical hormones into our body system, and therefore the body and the mind become quiet, calm and full of energy and capable of functioning in the worst circumstances that are available to us, even then. Now we come to the next step, which is pranayama. Also notice that there are many asanas where your head is put down and your legs are going up. What happens is the circulation of blood in your brain increases. And when it increases, all the organs that are here, including the ductless glands, operate at optimum levels and therefore you get what you need, actually. Okay. Now we come to, yoga asanas also help to keep your body healthy and your spine in fit condition. And if you sit straight without support and meditate in a chair for many years, believe me, you can avoid back problems at a later stage of your life. I have a chair here, I can lead. I would rather prefer sitting straight because my spine doesn't need that support, right? Okay. So I'm not spineless, that's what I'm trying to say. Now, we come to pranayam, the next step in Ashtanga Yoga. Pranayam is normally associated with breathing. Yes, it is. It is associated with breathing, but it is much more than that. Pranayam is the ability to control the flow of life energy, which is called prana, in your system through the practice of breathing techniques, because the breath is intimately connected to prana. Breath is not prana, but breath is intimately connected to prana. Breath, there's another word for breath, shwasa. So, shwasa is intimately connected to prana, and therefore, by controlling the breath, you can control your prana and make it go where you want. Now, in the body, according to yogic anatomy, slightly different from Gray's anatomy, we have the Ida and the Pingala and the Shushumna in the center, and innumerable channels through which life energy or prana flows. The job of the yogi is to gather all these energies and make them come to the Shushumna, which is the central channel. When this happens, the yogi begins to explore territories which are normally closed to a closed mind. So the mind, the doors of the mind and the windows of the mind are opened up because the prana is in full form, in its proper place, going through the right direction. This is pranayama. Apart from that, pranayama also helps you to keep your lungs healthy. People who do deep pranayama would have suffered less during this COVID epidemic. I can tell you that. When this was going on, people who know how to breathe could have escaped much of the suffering that came about because people don't know how to breathe. So the method of breathing is also very important because breath is the most important nutrition for us. Without oxygen, even the blood cannot be oxidated. Nothing will happen. So learn to breathe. So pranayama is the science of breathing. And then from pranayama you go to pratyahara, which means developing of the capacity by the yogi to fix his or her attention on something and also to withdraw it at will and fix it on something else. This is pratyahara. Normally it's translated as sense withdrawal. I don't think it's a proper translation. What it means is the yogi can fix his attention on one thing when he wants or when she wants, and then take it off and put his attention on something else when she or he wants to do so. Now this is a great capacity. What happens is when we give attention to something, normally we become obsessed by it. Yoga, the practice of pratyahara, helps us to be free of obsessions, but at the same time be able to point our mind in the right direction when we want and not get caught by it. So this is pratyahara. It makes for a wonderful, healthy living mentally and physically, and also spiritually. It is pratyahara that helps you to withdraw your mind from outside influences and direct it towards the inner core of your mind. This is pratyahara. Now the other parts, dharana, dhyana and samadhi. Dharana is one-pointed attention. A yogi is one who has developed the capacity to fix his attention on one thing for any length of time at any given time. Now, when this happens, the mind becomes an extremely strong, if I say weapon, it would sound like war, but it becomes an extraordinary instrument by which one can do things which normally people cannot do. So this is called dharana, and when one pointed attention continues for a long time, it automatically merges with what is called dhyana. Dhyana is the word used for meditation. Now one thing we should remember, if you think I am meditating, you are not meditating. I can say I am fixing my attention on something, dharana, When dharana becomes a long time thing, when you are not consciously meditating, when your mind is slipping into meditation, then it becomes dharana. Dharana, there is no effort. Dharana, there is an effort. Dhyana, there is no effort. Dhyana is that effortless stilling of the mind, the still mind which the waves have subsided and everything is quiet. This is called dhyana. When this dhyana takes place, the experience that the yogi gets is called samadhi. And what is samadhi? Samadhi is when the mind has become clear of all distractions. When it becomes clear of all distractions, it is calm and quiet like a pond without a ripple, like the surface of a pond. And then there is great joy coming from within, not from outside. So the yogi does not depend on his happiness on outward things. He has learned the source of all joy that is in the core of one's own consciousness. And samadhi is the state when one enjoys this. And one is so absorbed in it that very soon there is no difference between the meditator and what is being meditated upon. There is only meditation. This happens, then the yogi has achieved what is called samadhi. Now what happens in samadhi? Suddenly the yogi realizes that he is no longer a limited being, but is part of an unlimited, all-pervading spiritual reality. And if he realizes it, he also realizes that others also have the capacity to do so. So then, he begins to see divinity in every being. This is the culmination of being a yogi. So you cannot disrespect anybody, because whether they know it or not, the potential of being a divine being exists in all. This is the meaning. What I just discussed is yoga beyond asanas. I don't want to say anything more. So if you have any questions regarding this, you are open to it. Yoga helps in anxiety, because depression is usually the result of anxiety. People have labeled depression and anxiety into some kind of a schizophrenia. It's not. That is a completely different chapter. Anxiety comes because we don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know how to deal with it. We have past experiences which show that, oh, we are going to have trouble here. We don't know whether we are going to win the exams, pass the exams. We have written the exams, we're very anxious. Now, we have to, the yogi watches the mind very carefully. And what do you find when you watch the mind very carefully? It's precisely the anxiety that prevents you from doing well. It's not as if you are anxious that you are not going to do well. It's precisely the state of mind called anxiety that prevents you from doing well. So, when you recognize that, then you know that it is the mind that is causing the problem. The problem is not coming from outside, right? So, first we have to distinguish that, and then say to oneself that this anxiety which I have because I don't know what is going to happen is not going to help me to perform the task. Therefore, I should be free of it. This is the first step. Now, when you do that, you know what happens in anxiety? Your BP goes up, the heartbeat is increasing because you are very anxious. There are ways by which you can still this, and this is pranayama. Very simple daily practice of this particular pranayama can help you handle anxiety. You can't do it only then. It should be a daily practice so that when it happens in 2 minutes you can apply it and you're free of the anxiety, which is what we call the watching of the breath. It's also practiced in Vipassana. Watching of the breath simply means we never give attention to our breath. For a change, can we give attention to our breath? As we inhale and exhale, can we give attention to it, complete attention to it? You don't even have to control your inhalation and exhalation, just give attention to it. As you give attention to it, it slows down. automatically. And it's a well-known fact that when the breath slows down, the mind also slows down and anxiety is at rest. But you have to practice daily. 10 minutes of daily watching your breath will help an anxiety. When a situation that produces anxiety comes in front of you, then you can sit down for a few minutes and do this. Even when you're going in a bus, nobody is even going to know what you're doing. People are anxious, or if I breathe or close my eyes, what will people think? There's nothing to think. They might think you're sleeping. Don't be anxious about that. Okay, now that is one thing. The other, depression. Depression usually comes out of anxiety. If you can handle anxiety, then there is no depression. You know what happens? What is the meaning of depression? Oh, I have failed. Oh, I am going to fail again. This failure repeats itself. Where do I go? I am always in this state. Now, this is a negative way of thinking. There is a positive way of thinking that yoga encourages, which is you cannot try to remove the negative without substituting it with something positive. And what is yoga's way of doing it? Saying, yeah, maybe now you're in a low state because you're not succeeding, but in true essence, when your mind is very calm, you have access to tremendous amounts of energy which can lead you to success. If this thought comes that in us there is a potential which is extraordinary, which can face all situations, then depression will go away by itself. You can't take depression, keep it in front of you, try to handle it. It's not going to work. Take your mind off from that situation or thought which gives you depression by something that is positive and enjoyable. Right? Then slowly the depression is out and you're enjoying. This is the yogic way of freeing yourself from anxiety. And may I also say finally on this question that ultimately nothing is going to happen. No problem. You see, what is going to happen finally? You may lose the job. Believe me, there are many people who have lost a job which they thought was so valuable and found something which was better than this. How do you think? What happens to this? But we will not allow the mind to move forward by saying this is what it is, it should be, but it is not going to be. Free yourself from that. And one of the practical ways of freeing is through watching the breath. I have tried it many times when I was young. Not that I studied much during the exams, but I usually used to come with good marks. Why? Because there was no anxiety. And what is the secret? Watching the breath regularly, breathing in and out, breathing. Even today after I'm 73, and some situations it's natural that sometimes one feels a little anxious, even today. But you have your past experience and you know nothing is going to happen. So you swim. Imagine you're going to learn to swim and you look at the water and you say, if I plunge in, what is going to happen? I'm going to go to the bottom of the swimming pool, I'll die. You can never learn to swim. Once you learn to swim, you know it doesn't matter. So this is the thought process that yoga encourages. I hope you will believe me if I say that I incorporate yoga in my life, all my life. And if you think I'm not busy, I'm very busy. But people might think a yogi has no work, he's simply sitting and meditating. Oh, he can do it, I'm busy, I have this to do, that to do. Today, in about 10 minutes, I have to go to Bangalore, then I am flying off to Dubai, then I am going off to the US. I just came back a few days back from Europe, from Switzerland. It's very busy. But how do I manage without hassles? Right? So this is a practical example of a yogi, how he manages. Can be she also, he or she, whatever. So what happens is, in fact, it's not the work or the busyness of work that prevents us from practicing yoga and meditating and so on. It is this idea that if I am busy, I cannot do it. Not true. Okay. If you understand that it is a very important part of your life to be free of anxiety, to fill yourself with more energy, to have optimum energy, to understand the fact that your limitations are actually very less. You always have an unlimited mind. Now, to understand that is important, yes. If that is important, let the practice of yoga also be part of your busy routine. I am not saying you shouldn't be busy. This is not possible in this world. You cannot be. But also get busy with a little bit of practice every day. Whole day you are doing your work. Why can't we say, I will get busy with this thing in the morning so that the whole day will be taken care of. So, fix a time. If it is important, you will find a time. Where there is a will, there is a way. You can find it. Then, if you can't do it in the morning, you can do it in the evening. I know in the evening, then we come back, we are tired, and then we meet people, and there's a party, and somebody says, let me calm my mind, have a glass of wine. Okay, fine, I agree. But can we also drink the inner wine apart from the outer one? Can we say, okay, I will fix a time, morning or evening. Morning is best. You know why? Because the day has not started. You're still not caught up with those images. So, you're fresh. So, in the morning, before I start anything else, since it is so important for me, let me also get busy. It's also part of my busy process with the practice of yoga and meditation. And it is very simple. Simply start by doing a few postures. Even stretching exercise will do. Or find a yoga teacher close by. Nowadays, in the West, I find there are so many yoga studios. Some even have strange names like Kundalini. But there are so many yoga studios everywhere. Go somewhere, find out 10 minutes of short yogic postures. Please include head down postures in them, at least one or two. Because I can't explain the whole asanas, I am saying this. I am sure you will find a teacher who teaches yoga. And please, yoga is not witchcraft, yoga is not ghosts, yoga is a simple physical practice. So, do this for 5 to 10 minutes and then do a little bit of pranayama, which, as I explained to you, all you need to do is to inhale and exhale and give complete attention to it. But when you inhale fully. Let your lungs really fill up, hold for half a second and then exhale. And when you exhale, let it completely empty. So, sometimes in Kriya Yoga, which is my tradition, when we breathe out, we use the mouth because it helps to breathe out more. See, if I breathe out, okay, still there is some air hiding. If I do, it's gone. Because when the lungs is empty, you get more fresh air inside afterwards when you inhale. So, do a little bit of yoga postures and then sit if possible in a cross-legged posture. Give attention to your breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Let your mind go with the inhalation and exhalation. Hold your breath for a while, exhale and sit quietly. You have to do nothing, just sit quietly. It might help to fix your attention in the middle of the forehead by just knocking a few times so that you feel the pain, your attention can be fixed there. Sit quiet. Do nothing. Don't think why you are doing or what is going to happen or what you are going to achieve. Just say this by itself is what I am trying to do. If you can do this much, okay, for 10 minutes every morning before you start your day, you will find that in the midst of all your busy schedule, the mind learns to stay quiet and doesn't get into those frenzies of anxiety. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating it. Just my theory won't do. You say, oh, M said this, Sri M said this, but are you doing it? So, you have to practice it every day, like everything else. So, being busy is not an excuse. I am very busy, I don't miss my yoga. Why? Because I know how important it is. And the busier you are, the more important it is. Vipassana is yoga. Vipassana is one of the yogic techniques. It's not separate from yoga. You know, Vipassana, the meaning of the word, the great Gautama the Buddha did not teach any practices apart from Vipassana. He said, they call it Anapana, which means coming in and going out. Anapana. And which means, the Buddha said, if you give attention to your breath, which is coming in and going out, which we normally don't do, then by itself it is enough to calm the mind and to make it quiet, and even will take you up to nirvana according to the Buddha. Right. So, now here is a pranayama practice actually, in a way. It's not deliberate, but it is also pranayama. I mean, in pranayama we deliberately breathe in and out, in Vipassana you watch the breath. So, they are not different, they are not overlapping. Vipassana is a wonderful yogic practice, and if you are already doing Vipassana, you don't have to do any other yogic practice. Still, I would suggest do some asanas before Vipassana. Do a little bit of asanas, tone up your body and then sit for Vipassana. It will make all the difference. They are not two things. If somebody had said that, what is your opinion on taking cannabis every day, I would have said, watch out, careful. But if you say coffee, I won't say it's such a bad thing, but then you become dependent on it many times, and then your mind state is dependent on the coffee that goes in. Can we be independent of the influence of things from outside, substances from inside? Now, look. 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day, from my understanding, is not such a bad thing. If somebody says, oh, I don't even drink coffee, sometimes I think there must be something wrong with this guy. But what I mean to say, is a cup or 2 of coffee a day doesn't mean anything, doesn't cause any harm, doesn't make you a bad person, it doesn't prevent you from meditating. But like everything else, there has to be a moderation. Can't keep drinking 10 cups of coffee, then it stimulates the mind. Caffeine has its own bad effects for the body. Your kidneys get hurt after a while, they are not functioning properly. So, coffee and tea, I would say, in moderation is not a big thing. There is nothing wrong with that. It's better than 2 cups of coffee a day is not such a bad thing, and it is definitely better than 2 pegs of whiskey a day, from my point of view. So, whenever I see these tea shops and Starbucks come up, I am very, very happy, because at least people go there and sit down and have coffee. They are not going into a bar all the time. So, well, if a doctor says to somebody, it's good for your heart to have a glass of wine, no harm. But the problem is, it never remains 1 glass. Soon it becomes 2, 3, 4, and there you are. It's done. I would say moderation is the key. I drink coffee, so I can't say against that. I also drink coffee, not all the time. But now, why is the cross-leg posture popular? Because in those days, people rarely sat on chairs. One, they sat on the floor, solid floor. And when you sit solid on the floor, the best way to sit is cross-legged. You can't squat, cross-legged. And when you sit cross-legged, from the point of view of the prana and the energies operating in the human body, on the left you have the Ida Nadi, and the right you have the Pingala Nadi. And the central one in the spine is called the Shushumna Nadi, the channel through which energies operate. Now, when you sit in cross-leg posture, you shut off the Ida Pingala to some extent. and only your Sushumna is open and steady. So therefore all activity that takes place with the prana going through the central channel works better when you are sitting down. Cross-legged. Also sitting cross-legged cuts the circulation of blood in the lower parts to some extent, so that all activity on the upper part of the body becomes better. These are two reasons why the cross-legged postures have become so important. It primarily started with people sitting, squatting on the floor cross-legged, because it was known from early times that it is not a healthy thing to sit in a cushion and lean backwards. Now, the cross-legged posture is the only posture that can keep you straight when you sit down. Okay. The other is the Vajrasana. Now, Vajrasana is also good. Vajrasana is sitting on your heels with your legs behind. You know what is Vajrasana? It's a sometimes it's a prayer posture among some religious systems. So in Egypt also it is a very important posture. It's called the Vajrasana. Vajrasana, and therefore the cross-legged posture called Sukhasana, Siddhasana, Swastikasana and Padmasana. Padmasana today well known as the Buddha posture, but Padmasana existed before the Buddha, but Buddha sat in Padmasana and therefore it has become popularized today as the Buddha posture. It's actually Padmasana. So this helps to balance the body, to balance the circulation, to balance the energies and make you sit without much stress comfortably on the floor, which is why the cross-legged postures are popular. However, if you cannot sit cross-legged, you can also try and meditate sitting on a chair. Why I am saying this? Some people just postpone meditating because they say we can't sit cross-legged. I said, okay, sit on a chair and do it. It's okay. It doesn't matter. And now in the West they have developed some kind of thing in which you can put your leg at the back and sit. I don't know, I have seen some gadget like that. Not cross-legged, but it's like semi-Vajrasana, where your knees rest on some kind of thing. Different ways you can do it. May I add the last? May I add a last line here? If you cannot sit in cross-legged, it doesn't mean you are not a yogi. Good question. It's the natural tendency of the mind that it cannot remain without thought. Some thought or the other will be there. Now, so what is the way to calm it down? The only way to calm it down, usually the mind is occupied by something outside, outward, right? So the only way to, you can't say now, don't be occupied with anything outside. Not possible. It's mind's natural tendency. So what do? Give something inside so that the mind is occupied by it. And what is the thing that you can give inside? There is nothing better than your breath. Right? So once the mind is linked with the breath, then it's no more distracted by things from outside. And as it is linked to the breath, slowly, the mind calms down by itself. So the breath is a substitute. You substitute the breath with objects which are outside, so that when you begin to enjoy this feeling, there's a blissful feeling when you follow the breath. When you begin to enjoy this, then you are free of the outer distractions. So that is the way to prevent yourself from being distracted. I don't want to advertise. I could suggest my book, but I am not going to. I would suggest that since now YouTube, everybody does IT, right? So, internet. So, go to internet and search Sri M. Sri M. Exploring Consciousness Exploring Consciousness, which is a course I did for the IIT Delhi, especially good for young people, working people, scientists. So you can go to search and look for Sri M IIT Delhi. I did it for an entire 3 semesters, I think, more than 3 semesters. So there you can start looking at it scientifically, slowly. Some practices have been described, all that you can find, rather than reading a book. First of all, nobody gets time to read books these days. So go to YouTube and check on this. Especially look for IIT talks. This is meant for the young.
Sir, thank you. That was a very, very insightful session.
Thank you.
And I think we all have taken a resolution to start yoga if we have not started it yet. So this is the time. Now is the time. Maybe after this call, you can just start practicing a few breathing techniques, and from there you go.
Okay. Thank you very much.